This is the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. We interview industry experts to unlock key information that will help young professionals break into the multifamily world in order to create long-term and short-term wealth. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and written review so we can reach more listeners.
Welcome to another episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, John Stober, with my co-host, Fritz Ritter, and today our guest is Danté Belmonte. Danté is a top-performing real estate agent and real estate investor based out of New York. His company, Victory Capital Group, specializes in acquiring and rehabbing small multifamily buildings to force appreciation and maximize cash flow. He's currently working with qualified passive investors on specific deals to help them grow their portfolio and earn passive income.
Danté Belmonte, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily podcast. Before we really get into the show, could you just tell us and our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into the real estate investing business?
Yeah, most definitely. First off, John, Fritz, thanks guys so much for having me on the show. John, I know we kind of met because you sent me over your book, great stuff, and you were on my show as well. So appreciate you guys asking me to come on. My name is Danté Belmonte. I am a managing partner of Victory Capital Group, a syndication firm based out of New York, but we do all of our investing in North Carolina. I am also a real estate agent, residential real estate agent in upstate New York. I've done small multifamilies, BRRRRs, flips, single families, Airbnbs. I've done a lot over in this area, and now I'm moving my so-called talents over to the syndication realm. So, yeah.
So starting off with doing flips, BRRRRs, short-term rentals, what initially made you make the transition to multifamily?
That's a great question. So when I first started out in real estate, I actually bought my first investment property. It was a duplex before I got my license. Then I went after and started adding to that portfolio, the small multifamilies, the single families, the buy and holds, all that good stuff. And I realized I was raising private money and I was doing hard money and I was doing my own money to kind of scale the business. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, I was like, this is going to take forever. If I really want to scale this thing and make it a serious business, and I'm talking 15 years before it can really be something big where I'm taking down hundreds of units a year. And the amount of work it takes to take down all of those smaller multifamilies as well is outrageous, and the amount of people I'm competing with because the barrier to entry is so small. I was like, there's got to be something else. I always knew what syndication or large multifamily was in the back of my head. I always thought it was silly. I thought it wasn't for me. Started doing some more research on it and really started to understand the concept and the business model behind it. And I was like, this makes so much sense. So now I have the option that I can be a GP or an LP. And for those of your listeners that may not be too familiar with that, GP, general partner, you're managing, putting on the deal, doing all the work. LP, just a passive investor that's going to put their money in and get their return. So I was faced with the decision. I can invest in real estate in both ways, but which way should I go? And so I thought, LP is good, but you're not doing anything. GP is great. You're doing everything. And I love real estate and I'm always involved with real estate. So that's why I chose the GP side.
So raising private capital in those early days, what are some tips you would give our listeners to kind of help them who are maybe trying to do their first raise? I mean, it had to be some difficult, maybe some hurdles you had to go over, maybe at a young age or just not the track record, right?
So, I am 22 years old, so I'm pretty young, and I've been doing this for a few years, and I've been able to raise private capital a decent amount. So to give advice to those that are looking to do it, there's two things. One, you need to tell everyone and anyone what you're doing. You got to be posting on Facebook, Instagram, whenever hey, what have you been up to? Oh, I've been doing real estate. You just got to tell everyone so that way people know what you're doing. And the second one is you kind of have to force yourself to raise private capital. I put in an all cash offer in a property and I didn't have enough cash for it, but I told myself if I put a deposit down and I needed to make this happen, I would make it happen. So I went out, I found a local hard money lender, got that in place, and then the remainder capital for the project, I got some private lenders and my own capital. And it was pretty simple because when you go around and you tell everyone what you're doing, I was at a friend's house and her dad is a financial advisor, and I remember him saying, we were talking about real estate, and he was saying how his sister-in-law or sister they do flips on the side and they lend money to them for the flips, him and his wife. And so I remember that, and I just shot him an email and I kind of told him this is what I was thinking. And he's like, all right, cool. We'll start out with X amount and just cut me a check for that amount for the project. He knew what the returns were going to be because I told him in the initial email. And that was like the first round of private capital. Now that I put on like real estate meetups and I have the podcast, I have people contact me asking to invest with me passively, hey, I've been coming to your meetups. I've been sitting in the back. I'm pretty quiet, but I'd like to pick you to invest capital with. So it's really just kind of getting one of those blowhorns or whatever, I forgot, the megaphones, and you just got to yell to everyone and just tell them what you're doing.
So, as you're getting started out, and you're really young. You're even younger than us. Did you have any limited beliefs to like starting a podcast and a meetup and, trying to establish yourself as a thought leader in the space?
Not too much, because usually if I don't tell anyone my age, they don't guess I'm as young as I am. So I try to avoid that sometimes, but now I kind of thrive off of it. I've always been an authoritative figure. And, even in my friend groups growing up, I was always the one that was, bringing the ideas to the table, making decisions. And I always had that entrepreneur mindset. Like anything I did, I was really good at. I've been in sales since I was, 16, 17, and I've always done really well in sales because I've never had a problem talking to people and just telling them how I feel and giving them good advice without being too pushy. So I thought, no one's, one person around here has a meetup. It's pretty crappy. I think I can start a meetup and give way more value to people. I could start a podcast. I know a lot of real estate investors that I can talk with. I didn't really have any limiting beliefs when it came to that kind of thing. I just hit the ground running. I was pretty confident.
Never would have guessed you were 22 either.
The beard, man.
I know, it's the beard, right? I've had it since I was like 12. No.
Are there any skills that translated from sales to maybe relationship building and capital raising in this space? I feel like a lot of people who have that sales background are able to build relationships better. They have that follow-up background, and they can just raise capital at a higher level than others.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this will answer your question, but like the whole sales thing, because I have a very like personal personality and I like talking to people, sales was very easy for me. And it had to be something I believed in too. It couldn't be something I didn't believe in. It'd make it very difficult for me to like sell. So for examples, for 4 years, I worked at a dealership and a Mazda dealership, and I was the number one salesperson in New York State for new Mazda cars one of those years. And that was just because I really believed in the product. I've had 3 of the Mazdas myself. So therefore I was able to kind of talk about it a little bit more and really sell it. It wasn't like I was selling crap. Now, if you ask me how I, did with selling warranties or rust protection for those vehicles, I would tell you awful because I didn't believe in the product. Therefore, I never tried to sell it. So with multifamily, how that moves over to real estate is I believe in the multifamily model. I've done it myself. So therefore I could sell it and, talk to others about it.
So Danté, earlier, at the beginning of the show, you said you had limiting beliefs as far as like not just going straight into syndication. Could you talk a little bit about those and how you got over them?
Like how I didn't really believe in syndication and thought it was like too big.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So me and my buddy, a close buddy of mine, we always say, as we grow up, $100, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. Then you start making a few $100s, like that's nothing. $1,000, oh my gosh, that's so much money. You make a few $1,000s, it's nothing. $100,000, oh my gosh, same thing. You make a few $100,000, you think it's nothing. And that's what I kind of had to get through my head with syndication. I was like, you're raising millions of dollars. I've never had $1 million in my life. How am I supposed to raise it from individuals? How are they supposed to trust me with it? So that was something that I really didn't have inside me that I thought I could accomplish. But then as I started to sell real estate, X amount of $100,000 properties, close on X $1 million of real estate on the sales side, and then just watching money move around, the zeros just kept getting bigger. And to me, because I was seeing them so much, it was like I was seeing single dollar bills go across the screen as I was like a kid. You just get used to it. It's normal. So as I started to see those numbers pile up, I was like, oh, raising $1 million, that's not that hard. Raising $2 million, that's not that hard. And as I started educating myself, reading the books, listening to the podcast, talking to other investors, I really thought to myself, I can definitely do this. I have the mindset that I can definitely take this down, and I'm a controlling kind of person in a good way. so I can take control of this business and make things happen.
And so could you talk about when you finally did transition from, the smaller multifamily and the single family to like large multifamily?
Yeah, like talk about like how I decided or how it like actually happened.
Like, how did it happen? How did you get that first deal? Or how did you at least decide, like, this is what I'm going to go after?
And maybe, sorry, I was going to add to that.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Maybe some of the differences you saw as well in the two different investment types.
Yeah. So like I was saying, it's very difficult to scale this, and economies of scale is the biggest one. Instead of having 100 duplexes all over town scattered in let's say 50 different streets. Let's say I had 2 on each street. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of driving. It's a lot of management that's going to charge more because it's spread out. So once I saw I could put everything under one roof or multiple roofs in one parcel of land, I was like, this makes so much more sense. Private management is one place. If I could put 8 units under one roof, that makes more sense. It's all that economy to scale. So I really thought now's the time to do that. Sold off all those smaller multifamily, single family units and put the capital to work in the syndication realm.
So what did that first, syndication or large multifamily deal look like for you?
So we specialize in the North Carolina market. So my partner used to live in New York. He lives down in Charlotte now, or right outside of Charlotte. So what we specialize in is like the 20 to 50, but we'll do over 50 multifamily properties. So the first unit we're actually going down, or the first deal we're actually going down to see at the end of the month. I'm flying down there to walk it. It is going to be a 24 unit building. And that's where we thought we could specialize, because so many people are trying to go after those larger unit buildings, because all the gurus tell everyone to get as many units as you can in as little bit of time. And that's an issue. If you're trying to start off, you're probably going to struggle raising the amount of capital it takes to purchase that building. And second off, I have a good buddy who bought 1,700 units in 1 year. And the problem he was having was stabilizing all those units. And because they're focused on getting the next one and the next one, the next one, they weren't able to stabilize the properties they already bought in the past, and therefore they got crushed.
I think one of the reasons the gurus all say to go after like the 100 plus unit complex is because you get full-time payroll, management is just more scalable at that point. So what are you planning to do on this 24 unit, to operate it efficiently?
Yeah, so I'll talk about this one, and I'll talk about one thing after that. So what we're going to do is, we've interviewed property managers, and they charge a flat rate. Well, excuse me, not a flat rate, a percentage of gross collected income for the property. And then outside of that, we will have to pay payroll for any maintenance guys or any leasing agents that are coming through. So it's pretty standard. The best way to think of it is, let's say I have a duplex. And I have a property manager that's managing the duplex for 10% of gross collected rents. It's going to be the same thing, just with 24 units instead of 2 units. There's no on-site property manager. There's no on-site maintenance manager. It's, the property management company that comes out, leases the units, takes care of calls, and then the maintenance bills, or AKA payroll, that's going to come in to take care of the property and keep upkeep on it going. One thing that I just want to touch on real quick is, we focused on multifamily, but a self-storage deal came across my desk. It was 162 units, I believe. And my partner and I were really interested. It was off market, and we really tried to make it work. But the biggest problem was it was such a small facility that you need to have someone there full time, and having someone there full time, paying their full-time salary to oversee the entire facility, because you can't have no one at the front desk. No one's going to lease the units or anything. We looked into the kiosk method, but we weren't too comfortable with that because it cost so much, and because the building was so small and someone had to be on site, we couldn't make it cash flow because that person's salary was taking up a majority, if not all, of the cash flow. So that's just kind of like a side story I always think of when I think of these smaller multifamily units.
Yeah. And so, I have a 34 unit, and we have like a fixed payroll amount that's pretty small every month. But I haven't spoken with many property managers that do that. They tend to charge like lease up fees, first month's rent, half month's rent, and ours doesn't do that. So I'm wondering if yours is structured similarly to that, or if it's just like you pay for salary as you use it.
So it's each new unit that gets rented, it's half the first month goes to the property management, and then 10% after that. And then what they'll call in any maintenance guys or anything they need to take care of the property, but usually on site, they won't have anyone on site for that small of a building.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things you do to vet these property managers for these smaller units? What are some red flags you look for?
So when I was calling around, I had, a packet that would have questions. I could put down who they were, what time we spoke, and all that. And I would call these individuals and I'd try to figure out, first off, what they're charging. So that gives me an idea. What type of units they handle now. Are they only doing single family or condos? And nope, I don't want them, because managing single families is a totally different game. Okay. Do you manage multifamily? Okay. Yes. How many units? We do 100 plus. Probably not, just because they're more used to being on site. So I try to find someone that already does manage those 20 to 100 unit buildings. And then I ask them what class building they manage. And if they can't tell me what class their building is, then I probably don't want anything to do with them, because that is an identifying factor that needs to be known. So I look for someone that does, again, the 20 to 100 units. They manage similar classes to the class buildings we want to have, or that we're prospectively going to have. And then one question I also ask them is, how much do you raise the rent each year? If they say, we don't raise the rent, I probably don't want them, because that's going to break down my pro forma negatively. I had one property manager tell me they raised the rent by 10% every year. I was like, that's crazy. That you'll get vacancies really quick, because if you're renting for $1,000 a month and all of a sudden you bump them to $1,100 a month next year, odds are they're going to pack up and leave, because that's a really huge swing. But if you bump them by 3%, so like $30, it's going to be not as hard at hitting, and it's probably going to cost them more to move out of that unit to go somewhere else. So odds are they're going to stay. So those are some of the factors that we put in place when interviewing property managers.
Are there any add-ons that need to be great about a property manager that you kind of look for, like maybe like a good bench of contractors, or a strong list of vendors, or a great accounting system that really kind of maybe separate a few of the property management firms?
Yeah. So like I'll ask them what software programs they use, how often they do reporting, and what style of reporting they do. If they tell me like, we don't really send out reports, you can just request one. And then again, I'm kind of like, I want them to regularly send me stuff. I don't want to have to chase it down. I want it to come to me. I want to be able to open my inbox and see it and say that's what it is. Other ones that kind of go, spreadsheet or pen to paper, I don't really like that either. I like the actual software where even I could have a login and log in whenever I want, but I still want them to send me reports just to know they're active and they're looking at things.
So Dante, something we like to, ask most of our guests is, I guess, like, what's your value add to your partner? Because you're not in the Carolinas, you're up in New York. So like, what's your role? How did you kind of leverage your way into this deal and this partnership?
Yeah. So my partner, he is a very smart individual. He's actually friends with my father. He's in his 50s. He was a chemical engineer. He worked on projects for Tesla, and he left it all to do real estate. So adding value to someone that's very intelligent can be difficult. But the value I kind of brought to the relationship was I was really good at networking. I had the podcast. I have a meetup group. So I have a large investor base, which he did not have access to. I've done active investing. He has not. So I kind of have a good idea of hands-on roles. And I have educated myself above and beyond in this subject. I mean, I've literally read 100 books in the last year and a half, 2 years, all on real estate. So I know every single thing. But what he's really good at is like project management. So like overseeing the construction of the project. That's what he did. He lived out of one of those construction trailers half his life, working on these things, overseeing everything. And the nice thing is we think very much alike. When we both see something we don't like, we usually say it and we're like, it makes sense. We both see that. And I approached him asking him to partner with me because I knew syndication was very large. There's a lot to it, and I couldn't take on the task by myself. So I had to find someone that was like-minded to me, that brought something to the table I didn't have, and I brought something to the table for him, which he didn't have.
So how are you planning to manage, you're like on site, or you were on site when you were managing your smaller portfolio. I'm assuming that was locally.
Yes. Yep. Right in my backyard.
So what are you doing to tweak the management now that you're going to be, like 1,000 miles away, probably at least a plane ride?
Yep, exactly. So that's how I'll be getting there, is playing right all the time. Having my partner down there really helps because he's right in Charlotte, so he's going to be more hands-on when it comes to visiting the properties. But property management, if they're doing their job correctly, they should be there majority of the time. The first few months, I can see myself being there 3 to 4 times a month, implementing the value add plan, overseeing everything too, because I don't want to put it all in my partner's hands. Once Because I haven't actually done a full value add yet, full disclosure, I'm not going to pretend I have. I'm sure I will learn a lot as I go through it of what I need to do differently for the next one. Because you guys, I'm sure whether it's a single family or 100-unit complex, the first one you always tend to learn a lot on, and you don't make those mistakes the next time. I see you guys smiling. See, it's happened to all of us. I know it has.
Yeah, that's some good tuition right there. So I forgot to ask, I guess, in the beginning of this, is this deal a JV or syndication?
Syndication.
No, this is syndication. Okay, so
Yep.
you raised a lot of the money for this, right?
Correct.
So is there, what are some things, I guess, when you're presenting deals to investors, what are some things you like to do to kind of like just give them more stability? Because like you just said, this is your first value add deal, working with a guy who hasn't invested in real estate down in Charlotte, in a new market, someplace you aren't even in. So how are you putting this package together for investors to really kind of convince them that this is going to be a solid investment for them?
Well, first off, I talk about the market and how good it looks, and that makes people a lot more comfortable. They say, well, why don't you invest in your backyard? I said, because my backyard doesn't appreciate like this market does. It doesn't have population growth like this market does. So I kind of get them with that. My partner has invested in 3 syndications passively on the LP side, so he does have the experience there. And a lot of the people that we ask to invest with us, they know us as go-getters, successful individuals with anything we do. So they usually trust us, and if it's something that we're going to invest in or put our time and money into, they really do trust us. And we also have skin in the game. So we personally invest 50 to 100K each in our deals and plan to all moving forward. And also I get the question a lot, like, oh, how many syndications have you done? And telling someone 0 and talking about all this stuff can be difficult. But what I really do is I say my team. And when I refer to my team, I refer to my partner, my syndication attorney, my commercial attorney, my insurance agent, my broker, all those guys all together. It's not just me. There's multiple heads looking over my shoulder at what I'm doing, kind of dotting the I's for me and crossing my T's in case I do miss something.
Are you struggling to understand how to underwrite multifamily properties? Hi, I'm John Stober, and I completely understand your problem. I thought underwriting would come naturally to me due to my background in finance and accounting, but I quickly found out that there aren't a lot of resources that cover this subject. I had no idea whether what I was doing was right, wrong, or just original. I don't want you to have to pick up little nuggets here and there like I did. So I wrote an ebook called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small that puts together all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also giving away a deal analyzer with the ebook, and they're both completely free. Don't wait as long as I did to start chasing financial freedom. Go to bit.ly/underwriting ebook and get your free copy today. I'm wondering, how long did it take you to get to this point from the time you said, I'm going to go do syndications to, now it sounds like you're about to close?
So with timeline wise, trying to think about it because I'm actually not 100% sure. I think it was last June or July, I decided I want to do syndications. During that time, I was newly married, so that took a lot of time too. And there was a lot of procrastination in there just because I was also busy with my real estate sales job for residential. So it took a lot of time out of me from what I wanted to put into this business. So it hasn't quite been a year yet, more like 7 or 8 months, maybe a little less.
Would you describe those 7 to 8 months as challenging?
It was like drinking water from a fire hose. The amount of information I was taking in and still take in is pretty crazy. And again, that's where my partner comes in, is he kind of takes it all on with me. He helps me take it in. We try to learn different things and then kind of share them with each other. As you guys know, there's just a lot to this business. It's not a walk in the park. It's not buying a duplex. It's a lot more, and there's a lot more that has to be known about the business. So it's definitely been challenging just learning all of it. But as you continue to do more and more and more, stuff just comes to you like this.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because what I wanted to ask next is just mentally, like, how did you get through that? I mean, I know with us, there were so many days where it would have been so easy to quit. I mean, you're going up against people who probably have a lot more money. They have a lot more experience. They're sophisticated, and there's not as much inventory as there are of like a duplex and a house.
Right.
I mean, what kept you going?
So the first one was I never went to school. I never went to college. So I always told myself, if this doesn't work out, I've got nothing to go back on. I don't want to go to school. I never want to go to school. This is truly something that I'm passionate and happy about, and I'm very good at. So this is something I really want to work out. And, there's days where, you're looking for a deal. It's very difficult. You get very discouraged. You're just like, there's just not one out there, no matter how many brokers you talk to, how many websites you go on. But at the end of the day, you just got to maybe take a step back and just say, I'm going to keep doing this, because getting the first one done is the hardest one. It's the law of the first deal. It was the same thing when doing small multifamilies. Once I did that first one, which took a while, I did the second one the same month, third one the next month. It just kind of kept coming and coming and coming. And that's the same thing with syndication. You got to push through it. If it was easy, everyone and their brother would be doing it, but they aren't. And it's very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. All right. You better say something, Fritz.
Yeah, I was going to say, so as far as sourcing deals, is that kind of fall into your realm? Is your partner more so the construction management, or are you calling the brokers and finding the deals as well as finding the investors for these deals?
So we kind of do a mix of some things, but for broker side of things, like he's been taking on talking to lenders, I've been taking on talking to brokers and property managers. With the brokers, it's very important. It's very difficult to find deals right now. Even I'm having trouble finding a deal to line up after, the first one we're doing. What I'm doing right now is finding these brokers, going on, LoopNet or CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, whatever, Capstone. And I'm looking at what properties are currently under contract. I look for the brokers that are there, and then I call or I'll email and just kind of introduce myself and tell them what I'm looking for. I sounded really official talking to lingo. A majority of those guys will not respond to you. I had to send second emails out. So on those first, I probably sent like 80 emails to brokers in the Charlotte MSA. I think one responded. So then I sent out a whole second round of emails to say, hey, if you didn't see that, I hope you had a good holiday, and got some more responses. So then I've had about 10 out of those 80 brokers respond back to me, and I would email them and say, hey, listen, I'm going to book a flight to Charlotte right now from New York. I'm really serious, and I want to take you out to coffee. I want to take you out to lunch. I want to meet with you. I'm not just like some dude behind a screen. I'm a real person. I'm going to show you that. So what I've actually been setting up this afternoon is, I'm going down to Charlotte at the end of the month to walk some properties, but primarily go take some brokers out to coffee or lunch, and just showing them that I'm real. I'm serious. I'm hopping on a flight to come see you. I'm not just staying behind my screen saying, hey, let's do a Zoom call and talk about it. I want to physically shake your hand, and I want to be at the forefront of their mind. So I'm going to continue to email them every week, every other week, just seeing what deals they have. And when I do ask them to go out to lunch or get coffee, I also say, hey, and do you also have any units that meet these criteria that we can walk through while I'm there? And, I was able to line up some walkthroughs.
So what are some things you think for a new operator getting ready to call or email that broker? What are some things you need to have in line for yourself? Like, do you need to have your criteria down? Do you need to know what zip codes you're looking at? Like, what are some things that you need to provide them to show that you're not just somebody else who watched Grant Cardone on YouTube?
Right. So first off, you definitely have to do enough research that you know what you're talking about. Like, no matter what question they ask you, you need to know. And I mean, like, you read like Michael Blanc's his content, and he talks about, knowing the language. They won't ask for proof of funds or anything. I'm fine with them asking for proof of funds, because I can go to one of my lenders and just say, hey, can I get a approval letter from you? And I can give that to them, letting them know, and just tell them, hey, it's a syndication. We're raising the rest of private capital. So definitely knowing the lingo. And then you do have to know your criteria for a property, because they're going to ask. And if you don't know what criteria you want for your own property and you can't answer that to them, the broker is going to look at you like you've got five heads and be like, so why should I talk to you anymore? And how am I supposed to give you anything if you can't tell me what you want? You need to tell them what you want in order to get something in return.
So to go a little bit deeper on that, what are some bullet points that you recommend that you just have handy, ready to be able to answer or to just be able to give them?
Like for criteria, what I'm looking for?
Just criteria. Do you need to send them like a team packet to show like your team and your, something about your company, anything to help them?
We've got a good website in place. I always direct them over to my website. If you're emailing these people, please don't email them off of a Gmail. Go make a domain and make a real, Danté at victorycapgroup.com. Have in your bio, talk about, what you do. Okay, here's my podcast. Here's my photo. Here's our logo. Look professional. When you're going to these people, you need to have a business in place. Make them feel like that you've done 100 deals, even though you've done none, maybe. And then when I look at my criteria, I'm looking for unit count, class size, price per unit, style of the building, garden style, 20 to 100 units, class B or C properties, deferred maintenance, extra land possibly for self-storage or building additional units. These are all things you kind of have to have into the back of your mind. And like Michael Blanc states in his book, knowing the language and having answers to these questions these brokers are going to ask. I've talked to a decent amount of brokers, and I've only had one, and it happened. I've had one ask, okay, who's going to sign on the loan? Because they honestly want to know if you can close the deal. And, my partner and I were in a good financial state where we can just sign on the loan. We don't have to get anyone to sign for us at the moment. Once we start doing bigger deals, maybe we will have to have someone sign on the loan for us that we're not aware of.
So would you suggest having the key principal, the person who's going to sign on the loan, like in your credibility packet?
Yeah, most definitely. If they're comfortable, that is. Sometimes they don't want to be seen, but if they do want to be seen, have them here. And this is our high net worth individual that has experience that's going to sign the loan. That's going to happen as well. And keep in mind, I know a lot of people say, okay, you have to have someone with experience on the project, on the loan, or else they're not going to give you the loan. Well, who do you think got these loans in the first place? Not everyone had experience. Someone had to be the starter. So banks will give you a loan if you do have no experience. Not like, oh my God, I've never done real estate before, I just want to get a loan. Show them your website, show them your professional, show them your podcast, show them your small multifamily portfolio, and they'll be comfortable.
So are you financing your current acquisition through a community bank, or is that like a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, agency type of debt?
Agency debt. So we're going to a lender that's going to sell it to a Freddie Fannie. And then we're not going to do community at the moment just because we found their terms aren't to be as attractive. Mm-hmm. Agency debt's going to be much more attractive because of that 30-year amortization, the lower rate, non-recourse. Those are the biggest highlights. Those community banks or local banks, credit unions don't really play around with the 30-year amortization or interest-only period, which is game-changing.
Yeah, there's like 20 to 25.
Exactly.
So I wanted to go into this business plan to your new investment down in Charlotte. What's kind of your 90-day action plan, the unit renovations? How'd you come up with that?
So being that the occupancy is very high, we're going to leave things as is because we always purchase upon cash flow on acquisition and close. So as some of those units start to get vacated, that's where, or if there's some vacant units, which there are one or two, I believe, we'll start renovating those right away, getting those rented out for market rate for a renovated unit. Leave those other units as is, try to give them a rate bump at first, so that way we don't have to use the renovation budget to get the higher income. And then if those bumps start to send some people out, or people in life, they move, if they end up moving out, not because the rent's too high, but because they they just want to move out, then we're going to start renovating those units over, like you said, that 90 days. So within 3 months, we expect out of the 24 units to renovate, I believe it was 6 or 8 of those units. And then as time goes on and they become vacant, continue to renovate those units. We don't have a cash out refinance in the pro forma at this time, just because being the first project, we're just going to play it safe, make sure we can bring the rents up, cash flow pretty heavily from day one. If we see that, we're 60% below loan to value with our new rents or their new NOI and what the property can be valued at upon the market cap rate, then maybe we're going to look at refinancing the property and really blowing the investor's mind.
So is this a long-term hold for you, or do you have an exit plan?
5-year exit plan to sell, because that's really going to kick up our IRR a decent chunk if we're able to sell at such a short period versus holding it for maybe 10 years. And also, we want these investors to be happy, get their money back as soon as possible, tell their friends, so that way we can have more capital to play with as we move down the road.
Could you just talk a little bit about what IRR is?
Oh man, I don't have my whiteboard behind me here. So the formula for IRR is so it's pretty complicated. The easiest way, I don't know if this is right or wrong to some people, but the easiest way to describe it is it's the growth rate of your investment annually. It's not your annual return. It's not your overall return on investment. It is showing you by what percentage your dollar is growing. So we typically like to look for mid to high teens. So what that just means is it's taking, year zero is a negative investment. So how much you're putting in the deal, it's taking cash flow from year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, plus sale proceeds in year 5 and putting that back in, and what percentage that shows that your capital is growing per year. If there's a refinance in there, it's going to show somewhere in maybe year 3, plus the cash flow, and then whatever capital's left over that's being invested. So it's tough to describe, and I know you smile when you ask the question because it's not going to be an easy question to answer. But it's really just how much your money is growing for you. The way when I talk to investors, like a buddy of mine who invests heavily in the stock market, and I've gotten very interested in this, is I talk about the average annual return of cash flow, and I just tell them, listen, what are your investments in stocks getting? Okay, maybe I'm a little bit less, but I have the tax benefits on my side. You can diversify your portfolio, and then your annual growth rate, your annual growth rate of your dollar is going to look like this. And, that's something that's very attractive to an investor if you do it right and present it right.
Yeah, and most stocks their dividends are not as high as the cash flow from real estate. And
correct. And we're doing, and we're doing a monthly cash flow instead of quarterly, just because we want to get money back in investors' hands as quickly as possible. I'd personally rather get paid monthly than quarterly, and it gives us an excuse to talk to the investors and give them some content more often. And I can, say your stock's going to pay you out quarterly, and your dividends, we're going to pay you out monthly, and we're definitely going to beat those dividends because we're paying, a much larger percentage. You look at, I haven't looked at stocks in a while just because I don't play with them anymore. But you look at something like Microsoft or one of the dividend-paying companies. I can't remember if Microsoft does. It's almost laughable how much per share they give you per quarter on dividends.
I always think of AT&T because they're known as a dividend stock. It's like 5-6%, and it really 7 okay 7. It really it doesn't appreciate very much though.
It doesn't, I always describe the syndication to people like a tree and branches, because every month you're getting dollars back. Your money is already invested in the syndication and it's multiplying, but you're getting dollars back each month, and you can go throw that into another investment that's going to produce income for you as well. So here's your syndication. It's staying invested and it's giving you cash flow. Now let's look at this cash flow. You can invest it somewhere else and it's going to give you cash flow, and it's just going to kind of keep doing that, and it's going to keep branching out. So your initial 50 or 100K is now working in multiple places for you while you're sleeping at one time.
Right. I think of it's like, you get a higher dividend than AT&T, but you get the appreciation of, like a growth stock, like maybe like a tech company.
Yeah, regardless, the tax benefits are going to make you so much better than AT&T. And the biggest thing is emotion that goes up and down with the ticker of those stocks as well. It's just, and I have no control over the stock either. What someone does, in a high position of the company, or if someone wants to do something in a marketplace, it's going to affect it grossly. But with real estate, I can paint a room, put in new appliances, and charge a little bit more for rent. And that's going to make me feel like I'm in more control. I love control. I love power. Let's just be honest with it. A lot of people do. And if I can have that more in my investment, it's going to make me much more happy.
I think the tax benefits really just set the stage because you're going to get capital gains tax on every dividend you get paid and when you sell the stock. So if you look at it over 5 years, I mean,
Oh yeah, I'm right there with you.
You're probably going to lose a little bit on the sale if it doesn't grow.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, Dante, I wanted to get to our last section of the show that we call the Fast Five. They're the same 5 questions we ask every guest who comes on. So if you're ready, we'll get right into that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, number 1 is normally if you were still in your early 20s and you had to start all over again, how would you do that? But you are in your early 20s. So I guess, if you could do anything differently, what would you do? Or would you even do anything differently?
I don't really know if I would, because part of me wants to say, okay, I would skip over small multifamily and go right into large, but that small multifamily taught me the principles for the large. So, I mean, maybe work a little bit quicker. That's the only thing I can say, but I think I'm doing a really good job for my age, and I'm really behind the 8 ball on hitting things and making things happen. I'm doing it, and there's no question asked there. So I don't mean to sound, cocky or about myself, but I think I'm doing the right thing. So there's nothing I would change at this moment.
Yeah. All the older people I know tell me I'm doing the right things and I'm young. And
exactly.
You're 5 years younger than me.
Yeah, I definitely think you're doing the right thing.
Well, thank you.
Question number 2, how do you see young professionals adding the most value to experienced operators?
Something that I'm going to kind of bring to the residential real estate world is my father's a real estate agent. He's been a real estate agent for 16 years. And I'm just amazed with how real estate agents that are older don't use technology at all or don't leverage it at all. I think they have lots of experience. They know how the game works, but at the same time, they're going to start hurting, or if not, are hurting now because they're not leveraging technology well enough. Us young bucks, we know how to use technology really well. And it's the truth. It's one of the most powerful tools. And, you say, okay, how can I get investors? You use this thing that's in your pocket, in your hand every single day to reach out to people, not just by calling them, but using the apps on it. You look at Clubhouse is a new app right now that's pretty popular. It's starting to pick up some stream, invite only, but a lot of multifamily investors are talking on it, where these older, experienced individuals, they're back to basics kind of thing. They don't know how to use the products we're using. Let's look at an investor database, for example, like Syndication Pro. If you're using that to send out K1s, distributions, let people log in for their investor portal, that's going to look really good than the syndicator that's been syndicating for 30 years and says, okay, I'm going to mail you everything out or email it over to you. Yeah, emailing is great, but it's an older thing. You use it as conversations, not to send documents through, versus a secure portal that you can send things through.
Mm-hmm. So Dante, what's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, and have you since adjusted your business because of that?
Say that second part, I didn't hear that.
Have you since adjusted your business?
So one of the biggest mistakes I've made is there was a vacant unit when I was doing the small multifamilies that I had become vacant, and I was very, very busy, and I didn't want the unit sitting vacant. So I did what I usually do. I host an open house. I have people come. If they're interested, they can apply, leave the application fee. And just something with the schedule was kind of wonky, and I only had a few people show up for the open house. And I had like 2 apply. One was no longer interested, and the other one, she really liked it. And she left her, not deposit, but her application fee. So I kind of looked it over, breezed over it, and I approved her. Did the credit check, did the background check, things looked good, so I approved her. But what I failed to do was, I was so busy, I didn't do my regular verifications. I didn't ask for pay stubs and check out her employer. I didn't call her employer. And because of that, that tenant struggled paying rent because I didn't do my due diligence. Yes, it was her fault, but it was really my fault because I didn't do the proper due diligence. I didn't take the action to fill the unit with an appropriate tenant, appropriate residence. So that's something that I really screwed up in my business. And, I had a few months of no rent because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. How I would change that now, just because I'm in the business of being an investor, not a landlord, I don't really have to deal with that anymore just because my property management does. But I'm going to make sure the property management vets the tenant properly.
Yeah, Fritz, you have a story like that.
Oh,
Yep,
don't we all kind of though?
I got a nice hard story about that with 6 months and
Mm.
checks in the mail. It's a very odd story because I actually got money out of her. So I thought like if you were just going to skip and not pay at all, why pay anything? But anyway,
Right.
that's for a different story. Question 4, what's been your favorite way to incorporate technology or social media into your business?
Favorite way, I really enjoy using Instagram. I really enjoy doing the podcast, and it's brought a lot of business to me, whether that's people, looking to come to me to learn or to invest. I've just found that it's very powerful. Like I said, Instagram, I really like that one. It just brings people to me. I can put content out and have people come back. I don't have to reach directly out to people to have them come back to me.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? What are some things you do on Instagram that you're using to reach more investors or just put content out there?
Nothing too crazy. Like usually when I'm on a podcast or have someone come on a podcast, I have them like post it to their page and then I repost it. So that way they're kind of looped back to me or I'm looped back to them. I don't go crazy with it like a lot of these people do, but every time something comes up, some event or, something I'm hosting, I do put it out there for people to see. So nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Last question is, what book has been most influential to you along your journey? And it could be like a documentary or a movie.
The biggest one would probably be this one here. The Encyclopedia of Commercial Real Estate Advice. So this one, not a lot of people know of. Have you guys heard of this one?
No. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, that book is a couple inches thick.
It's 500 pages. It's fairly new. It's not that well known. I wrote to the author directly. He's a mortgage lender, and he just breaks everything down. It's a great read. It takes a really long time to read, but it's everything you need to know about commercial real estate, whether it's office space, retail, multifamily, everything you need is right there.
Nice. I read a book like that when I was first learning. Very dry, but very, very informative. Yeah,
it's great. And the author's name is Terry Painter, by the way. So you could find that on Amazon. It's a $50 book, but to me, it's worth every penny.
Yeah, Terry Painter. All right. Well, cool. Danté, thanks so much for coming on the Millennials and Multifamily podcast today. If anyone wanted to connect with you, reach out, or learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show. Best way to contact me is email Danté@victorycapgroup.com. You can also check out our website at victorycapgroup.com, or you can find my podcast, Make Money, Make Sense in Real Estate, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those good things.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Millennials and Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a written review at iTunes so that we can connect with more people. Finally, head on over to kronosinvestmentpartners.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay updated on everything we're doing. If you're interested in partnering with us as we find new opportunities, you can also schedule a phone call with us under the Contact Us tab at kronosinvestmentpartners.com.